Okay, welcome to the pre-show.
The exclusive pre-show, not for those in the cheap seats.
No, you guys have paid, so now you get to play.
That's right, and we're here to play with you. There,
Or something like that.
that sounds wrong. Well, never mind.
Yeah.
But I'll bet our wonderful patrons have wonderful questions.
Yes, Max Stuckey has a couple questions. He says, what's Charles's take on Amari de Rincourt's The Coming Caesars?
Well, I read it years ago. I read it when I was in college, 40 years ago. It came out in the 60s. And I read it late 70s, early 80s, something like that. I thought it was prophetic then. I think it's prophetic now. Um, Certainly,
What's prophetic?
the book.
I mean, like, what about it?
Well, his thesis was that basically America's democracy would repeat the Roman Republic story, and that eventually would fall into the hands of strongmen. I would think that that's in all likelihood going to come to pass at some point if the country is going to remain a united entity. Right now, more than ever before, we're extremely divided. Uh, and I don't have to elaborate on the nature of those divisions. Um, Presuming one of two things, uh, or both: a that the Trumpster's successor is one of the sort of sideshow freaks the Democrats have been putting up recently, and B, that the economy tanks at some point. The fault lines in this country will roar into open life. And the only way that they would be put back together, I think, is through some sort of strongman. Um,
That's a good point, actually. That we're lucky we're doing well economically, you
yeah.
know, whereas everything would undergo that much more of a stress test should we really get in trouble
As long
economically.
as, yeah, I mean, as long as people's bellies are full, then they can tolerate a lot of garbage. But and as I always like to say, as long as we've got anti-obesity ads, we're not really in trouble.
Yeah.
But but you give us a taste of financial collapse, and let me tell you, tolerance is going to go right out the window, and it won't be pretty. It
Okay.
won't be pretty.
So
So I would say that I mean, obviously, as with anything else, we can't predict exactly how it'll work itself out. And I would say further that unless some sort of strong man emerges at that point, probably our future as a united nation uh, is in doubt. Because the problem is that the religion of the state, this, the American civic religion, has very few adherents, and it's really what held us together, alongside a common moral code, which is also gone. And the regional differences are coming once more to the fore. We're harassing our southern brethren, pulling down their statues and so on. Uh, at the moment, they're kind of annoyed and resorting to the courts and stuff. But if the day ever comes that there's a question of eating, it's amazing how quickly that'll turn to weapons, I think.
hmm.
And what then? Who knows? I don't. It's not a road I really want to go down to. It's not a road I want to go down.
Yeah. Speaking of Trump's successors and the sideshows, just a little tangent. Um, I like what Fox News said a little bit of the majority of people's opinions in terms
Yeah.
of the candidates, where most people say I don't agree with Trump on everything, but these other people are nuts.
Well, see, that's the problem. You're not. If the Democrats want to beat Trump, they're going to have to come up with someone who doesn't belong in a sideshow act. Not the bearded lady, not the Siamese twins, not the pinhead. You know, don't do that. You want to bring up someone who doesn't drool. someone who acts like a grown-up. Because, if you're not crazy, Trump would be fairly simple to counter in several areas. The problem is they're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I had an interesting discussion with Steve, my brother, about this. He said some interesting things, because some of the things they're pushing, it got him to say, people aren't just empty vessels where you could just program insanity into them. There is some limit. They're not this perfectly formable or moldable piece of clay that you can shape in your... I mean, there is some sort of limit. There's some line you cross, and you don't go any further. Is that fair to say? Or are people truly completely moldable?
No, I don't think they are. I think there's an irreducible something. And I think that when that irreducible something is, A, when that's reached, and B, there's desperation, then you've got firewood.
Yeah.
And
you've got a white lash. You've got a white lash.
God. Even framing it that way is the stupidest thing I can imagine.
Well, you know what I'm drawing from? I'm drawing from CNN's
I know what you're drawing from.
Commentary on the election of Trump. It's a white lash.
I remember when the moron said that, and I thought, how stupid is he? You don't want to frame it that way. I mean, similarly, the Southern Poverty Shakedown Center, on the day that Mr. Justice Anthony Kennedy in 2015, out of his own absolute power over the nation, imposed gay marriage on everyone, the Southern Poverty Shakedown Center ran a cartoon that showed the Confederate battle flag flying and then being lowered, and then the rainbow flag being raised and flying. And I thought, how stupid are you? You don't want to frame it that way. Because if you do, you are going to build a backlash, moron. The last thing members of any kind of minority, be it racial, religious, or shall we say behavioral, want to do is put themselves on the side of the oppressors and see themselves framed as an arm of oppression by the rulership. That's just crazy. It's just nuts, because what'll happen? Who do you think's going to get it as soon as things go south? And they won't deserve it, not by a long shot.
Shouldn't we be grateful, though, that they're that stupid?
No.
Because what I'm saying that is because if they were smart, then they'd be more successful, right? I mean, on some...
See, the problem is they're going to break it up. Look, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And on a certain level, you're right. They'd have done worse and more quickly. But the point is that they are setting up tons of victims in the next cycle of history. And who wants to see that?
I see what you're saying.
Who wants to see that? I mean, listen, there are a ton of innocent people who will suffer for this crap. All right? And it annoys me like you wouldn't believe. But this is what's going to happen. And it's precisely because of people like the Southern Poverty Shakedown Center and Mr. Justice Kennedy and that fellow on CNN. It is not, let me repeat, these are not racial issues. They are not even matters of behavioral minorities. They are matters of a small minority exercising its power over its subjects, using the cover that our form of government gives it. I mean, stop and think about it. We have a judiciary that can alter reality at will. Henry VIII couldn't do it. He couldn't suddenly rule, well, you know what? I'm going to have 6 wives at once. No. He had to pretend somehow that everything he did was legal, in accordance with a law that was supposed to be beyond himself. Whereas our justices make it up. I mean, stop and think about that. The judges are creating law. This is insane. And the fall people will be those very minorities who supposedly are being catered to. And it wouldn't even be so bad if some minorities are getting something out of it in the immediate, but they're not. All they're getting is a bit of lip service now, and if things go south in the future, whole lots of problems. I mean, this is horrible. This is really horrible.
Those are some.
And then what'll happen? My father years ago wrote a script back in the 60s called The Return of Cromwell. I think I've mentioned on the show before. And it was about a strong man taking over the United States. And it was not a pretty script. And the thing is, you sympathize with the man in the beginning because what he faces is so horrible. But the problem is he takes over and he represses the evils, but it never stops there. It can't stop there.
Right.
It can't stop until the individual who takes over feels completely secure. But when an individual takes over like that, he has no sense of legitimacy, so he can never feel secure. So, I mean, this look at the coming Caesars that what's our friend's name?
Max.
That Max asked about. Let's not forget what a horrible time it was establishing Caesarism. It's not like it was a nice, peaceful, fun thing. It was the assassination of Caesar himself. It was before that, the War of the First Triumvirate and the War of the Second. It was the civil war between Caesar Augustus on one hand and Mark Antony on the other, preceded by that between Julius Caesar and Pompey. And then there was all sorts of unpleasantry before Augustan rule was established. And Augustus himself was not secure in the throne. No, I mean, we may very well be headed in that direction, but it's a hard rains are going to fall. And I, for one, am not looking forward to it.
Well, that's nice and everything, but equality can't wait.
Yeah, well, neither will Caesar.
That's a popular hashtag on Twitter, right? That's the campaign line. Equality can't wait.
Well, since the beginning of time, I'm sure it can wait a few years longer.
Okay, so
in the immortal words of George Orwell, once they get their wonderful regime established, some animals will be more equal than others. All will be equal, but some will be more equal. And it's always that way. And people are too silly and they don't know any history. They don't understand these things. There are always the rulers and there are always a minority. There are always the ruled and there are always a majority. That's the way it is. I'm sorry, Buttercup. It's very upsetting. I know. Isn't that awful? I'll never be in charge. I don't really count for anything. Boo hoo hoo.
Hey, okay.
Any other questions?
This is gonna be a great episode. That was awesome. First question on the pre-show, and your blood's up. All right.
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry, Max. I try to be a nice person. I just fail miserably. What else we got?
Okay. Does Charles think that Oswald Spengler was right in his assessment of the Western culture?
Oh, is this from Max too?
Yeah, that's from Max too.
Max, you've got yourself one geopolitical vision going on here. The next you're going to be reading Toynbee. Heavens. All right. Well, Oswald Spengler wrote a book called The Decline of the West, which posited that civilizations, like human beings, pass through, in a sort of iron law, they pass through stages of birth, youth, flowering, decline, and death. And that every civilization goes the same way, and the West would go the same way. And we're right now in old age. That was basically what he said during and after World War I. Well, there's a certain amount of truth, I think, to his theories. I think, though, that what makes Western civilization different from all the others that have ever been or are at the moment is that God selected it from all eternity to be the vehicle for the spread of his true religion around the globe. Now, that is what leads us to Belloc's famous line, "The faith is Europe and Europe is the faith." But it's not really a comforting line, because if Europe is not the faith, and by Europe I don't just mean the continent, I mean the daughter countries like ourselves in Australia and South America and everybody else. If we're not the faith, then we're nothing. And that is what faces Western civilization. I believe if we can regain the faith that we were created for and that created us, then we'll get a new lease on life. If we don't, we shall die, and some other civilization, perhaps one as yet unthought of, will pick up the slack. That's my personal feeling about it. I may be wrong, but the good news is I won't be around to find out this side of the grave anyway, so we'll find out on the other side, maybe.
Maybe I misheard you. Did you say God has chosen Western culture to deliver Christianity, or to...
To serve as the vessel, the vehicle, for spreading Christianity around the world. Isn't
the culture contingent on the religion itself, so therefore Christianity in itself transforms the culture?
It sure does. But as I say, I mean, again, you've got to bear in mind that history is really the working out of God's will against a background of innumerable fallen wills. And just as Christ was born in Judea at the time when the Roman Empire provided transport, so one could go relatively easily, cheaply, and relatively safely all the way from Palestine to Britain. That obviously is why he chose to be born then and there. From that time on, Rome was indeed transformed by the faith, which captured several other countries that were not in the Roman orbit, but it was in the daughter countries of Rome, east and west, that it made its great expansion, and then eventually was brought over the seas to places that were unthought of at the time our Lord came to the earth. But almost at the same time that it began its great expansion overseas, a big chunk of it was ripped away. And that has provided that, and the subsequent revolutions has provided the great drama of Western civilization. Many souls won, many souls lost, and now here we are. But the faith has been sown deeply amongst the Chinese and the Indians and in Africa and so on. And I have a feeling that out of one of those, if not several of them, if we fail and Western civilization dies due to its lack of the faith, that something will come along to take up our slack. It may be that in 1,000 years, China will be Catholic the way Italy was. Or India, or Africa.
Yeah, gosh, a couple of years ago, I had looked at the global Catholic numbers, and it's interesting because it's mostly flat. Because while the West is in decline, the other areas like Africa have been growing, and so yes. I thought that was interesting. And from our perspective, from our angle, everything seems to be collapsing. You look at the leadership in church and state and everywhere, and everything's a mess. Everything's degenerating. But then you just look at the numbers, and it's like, whoa, it's flat. It's okay.
Well, it's not okay because it should be growing, but it's a lot better than it might be.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is that sooner or later, one way or the other, our problems are going to be resolved. I mean, the leadership in the West is decadent and stupid in church and state. That's a broad brush, but you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
And one of two things will happen. Either will collapse because of that stupidity, or they'll be replaced by other leadership that will do their jobs. one or the other. If we collapse, then some other civilization, as I say, the Chinese, the Indians, the Africans, or maybe all three at once, who knows, I don't, will take up our slack, although it will not necessarily be recognizable to us now. But Ambrose and Augustine could not have recognized Clovis, even though he was the future. So, who knows? You know, the trick is, while these things are fun to speculate about, what we have to do is focus on making the present the best we can. We've got to focus on our own sphere, our own prayer life, our own good works, our own faith, and that of those around us. And, you know, at the end of the day, if we make it to heaven, then this whole strange adventure that we've each of us been through will have been worthwhile. If we go to hell, then it won't matter if the greatest triumphs of the church are still to come. We won't be partaking.
I don't really like your suggestion because that actually involves me doing something. I much rather like suggesting ideas for other people because that means I don't need to do anything.
Actually, I agree with you. I agree completely with you. It's just that I can't lie to the audience. They're paying. This is the pre-show. These people are paying for the truth. I can't lie to them. I'd love to. I'd feel better about myself.
Well.
And my choices.
Okay.
Do you know how close I came to eating meat today? On 3 occasions? It would have been so easy.
Sad. Well, you fighting the good fight.
Plus, I had iced cafe instead.
That's not that bad.
Oh, it's great. And it got my mind a little bit off meat.
There you go. Okay. Next 2 questions are from Patty.
Hello, Patty.
Charles, since you have a good fashion taste, what's the best place to get a seersucker suit for a reasonable price?
Joseph A. Banks. They're a national chain, started, I think, in Boston in the 19th century. All my seersucker comes from them.
Wow, okay. I think it's Joseph A. Bank. No, is
Banks,
it Banks?
Plural.
Oh, Banks.
It's Banks.
Joseph A. Banks. Okay. Okay. Next question. Can or maybe should a Catholic use the King James Authorized Version Bible for private devotions as part of the Anglican patrimony? Of course, if something looks off, I'd have a Catholic translation and or doctrinal book close at hand.
Well, you really should use the Douay Rheims. But the King James is a big part of our literature and so on and so forth. So I suppose it won't kill you so long as you keep the Douay Rheims close at hand, or better, the Haydock, with all of its explanations. The Haydock is the Douay Rheims, with even more extensive doctrinal explanations. But the King James Bible, let's face it, it was meant to reinforce heresy. It's beautiful, like the Book of Common Prayer, but just as Cranmer was hoping to decatholicize people with the Book of Common Prayer, and created a thing of beauty to do so, so too the King James Bible. So, to address the problems with the BCP, the Anglo-Catholics of the 19th century and the early 20th came up with the Anglican Missal, from which a big chunk of the Anglican Ordinariate's liturgy comes. Similarly, if you really got to use the King James, make sure you have the Douay Rheims close at hand, or better, the Haydock. But, you know, the Douay Rheims, it really isn't all that different. It's got all the these and thous you could possibly stand, except that it's accurate.
So, the King James Bible is beautiful, but it promotes heresy.
Yeah, pretty much.
What's beautiful about it?
Oh, the phraseology, the language. It's beautifully written, you know. And it is, with the Book of Common Prayer and Shakespeare, is the 3 foundations of English and American literature.
Okay.
I mean, it's just the way it is. I would different, but it ain't. So one thing I've noticed in life is that reality has had very, very little interest in my views or opinions or tastes. And it's one of the reasons that reality and I have had a running feud since my childhood.
Yeah, that's why you're a LARPer. You're just got your head in the clouds and you're all about fantasy.
You bet. Me and Elwood P. Dowd.
What does
You
your
remember
family say about fantasy? Fantasy is for people who, or no, reality is for people who can't handle fantasy.
Reality is just a crutch for
Yeah.
those who can't handle fantasy.
There you
Exactly. Exactly. Those, believe me, those of us who have served in the kingdom of Gondor, we know.
go. Oh man. Okay, our last question for the pre-show is from Casey.
All right, Casey.
Recently, I was visiting the Blessed Celos Shrine in New Orleans. It was great. Nonetheless, being the skeptical trad, I was a bit curious about the Redemptorist Order's choice of symbolism in God's all-knowing eye, placed in quite a few prominent places, including high above and over the altar, and even statues of Mary being crowned by God the Father and Jesus in this particular Church of the Assumption. I assume the best, but maybe you could help. It looks awfully close to the Masonic all-knowing eye. Which came first? Are they the same?
Well, believe it or not, Casey, your gut feeling was correct. The all-seeing eye in the triangle was a perfectly decent medieval symbol of the Trinity. And because Masonry did not really get a foothold in Spain or Italy, where in the 18th century, where the Redemptorists were founded, or Spain in the 18th century, whence came Father Serra to California. That's why you'll see on a lot of his chasubles, he's got the all-seeing eye on the back, and why some of the missions have the all-seeing eye there in California. It wasn't an issue. Then the Masons, as you rightly guessed, picked it up. But what I usually will do is bring visitors to California, especially if they're the trad variety, show them a museum with one of Father Serra's chasubles hanging up. And they'll see the all-seeing eye and go, what's that? And I'll say, California was a Masonic plot from the very beginning. And given what we've become, it's kind of easy for them to believe. But in reality, the world of reality where people are, not insanity where most of us live, the truth is that it's a Catholic symbol that they took and shanghaied. Remember, there's a limited number of ways you can depict things. On the one hand, the Satanists want to degrade the cross and the crucifix, so they invert them. But that's also the symbol of St. Peter, because he was hung upside down. So if you see a church dedicated to St. Peter, you might see an upside-down cross. Does that mean the Satanists are there? Probably not. Similarly, the pentagram that our Wiccan friends like to use now was, as we see in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, originally a symbol of the 5 wounds of Christ, the 5 joys of Our Lady, and the Soviets, God help me, the Satanists inverted it, not to show their dislike of Wicca, about which I don't think they have much in the way of an opinion, but their hatred of the faith. But very modern and I don't want to say gullible, but gullible people say, oh heavens, the pentagram, it's the sign of Wicca, oh, it's satanic. Well, at the end of the day, where do you begin? Beware anachronism, ladies and gentlemen. Beware the anachronism. So remember that just because you see a symbol as meaning something to you, it doesn't mean that's what it means in the context it's being used.
Okay.
Beware the rush to judgment. Otherwise, you'll end up telling people that California was a Masonic plot from the very beginning, or that the double eagle of the House of Habsburg and the House of Romanov show that they were members of the 33rd degree of the for Masonic order. You could say that, and believe me, you'd find people willing to believe you and even pay you for saying it. And you'd look ridiculous in the eyes of anyone who knew what they were talking about. Not that that's a problem today. When looking ridiculous in the eyes of anyone who knows what they're talking about is something that most of our opinion makers are quite oblivious to.
the one last caveat I'd just like to add is evil cannot create; it can only destroy or mock or
Yeah.
pervert. And
Yeah.
so, whether it's a society or just anything. So I think that's why Casey's instinct said that, because I've been hot on that. I always say that about evil is it's just not clever enough. Any uniqueness or cleverness that evil has is something that God has allowed. Like, that's not. I remember you were talking about this one. Well, I'll just say incident, and the way you described this one spirit or this demon is you characterized it like a wild dog, and that was so
Yeah.
interesting to me. I never thought of it like a wild beast, and I've thought about that this past year for so long, and because we always think, oh, Satan's so clever, or Satan's this and that, but intelligence is kind of a gift. You know what I mean?
It is. It is a gift. And the devil, in one sense, he's more intelligent than we are. But, he has blind spots. One of them being, of course, that since he's a pure creature of will, even though on one level he knows he can never win, he will never give in. He will never surrender. Another thing about, and we've discussed this before, but I still find it amazing every time I think about it, is the fact that, as you know, at exorcisms, any of your unconfessed mortal sins, if you're a witness, the possessed person will joyfully cry out at you. But they can't see mortal sins you've confessed.
Yeah.
Now, that strikes me. I mean, it gives you kind of an insight, I guess, into reality.
Yeah.
In that you performed the mortal sin. You did it, okay?
Yeah.
And if you hadn't confessed it, the devil would be aware of it. But then you confess it, and in retrospect, he can't see it. Except he saw it when you were doing it.
Isn't that like with God to some extent, though? It's like it never happened?
Well, of course. But it's kind of freaky.
Yeah. It is.
I mean,
because it did happen, but yet, and from our very frail mortal perspective, like, we know it happened, but then from some ethereal perspective, it's like it never happened.
It never happened at all. And even though they were aware of it at the time you did it, they are unable to be aware of it now.
Yeah.
It's, these are precisely the areas where if you think too much about them, you'll be ready for Halloween.
Yeah. I know you're ready for Halloween.
I'm always ready for Halloween. But I'd rather just have the pumpkins and the costumes and all that kind of thing. The deeper elements of it I could do without. But I'm afraid life is a package, You don't get to pick and choose. I'll only have the fun parts, please.
Okay, so that'll do it for the Patron pre-show. This was a especially good one. I really enjoyed this one. Nice long one, good discussion. But that's just the warm-up for the real thing.
Because now, ladies and gentlemen, even though you paid for your special top-of-the-row seats, now the hoi polloi are going to come filing in, because it's their right too. They have a right to this show, and they are going to get it.
Yeah.
However, since you're already here, you might as well relax, kick your shoes off, get some hot cocoa, maybe do as I do, a glass of gin. No, it's not gin. I wish it was. I mean, what? No.
I didn't know you're a gin drinker.
I am, but not. not I don't think so. Boy,
gosh.
All right. Let me tell you something. Kessler's gin. It'll get you through the day, kids. Let me tell you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that would really be something. All right. It's smooth. No, I'm afraid if that were gin, I'd already be halfway home by now. Oh gosh, what a life. Anyway, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you, and thank you for making the weekly show possible.